Rain hammered the roof of the old Honda like the world was trying to shake Claire Mason awake from a life she never asked for. Her 7-year-old son, Danny, slept curled in the back seat, unaware that this grocery store parking lot had become their bedroom again. Claire held a crumpled blanket around him, shielding him from the cold while fighting the ache that had lived in her chest for months. Everything she'd once depended on, her job, her marriage, her apartment, had collapsed in a single season, leaving her wandering from parking lot to rest stop, pretending to Danny that they were on some grand adventure. Tonight, while searching for anything useful in her jacket pockets, her fingers brushed an old raffle ticket she'd bought months ago, back when life still felt repairable. The drawing was tonight. She almost ignored it, but a whisper inside her urged her to check. When the winning numbers appeared on her cracked phone screen, she froze as every digit matched. Not a cash prize, something stranger. She'd won a mansion, an abandoned Victorian estate in a remote valley she'd never heard of. She stared at the grainy photo, unsure if this was a mistake, a miracle, or a final twist of cruelty. But beneath the shock, a single fragile spark lit inside her. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the way back home. The next morning, Claire drove toward Milbrook Valley with Danny buzzing beside her, imagining what their new house might look like. She didn't tell him it might be falling apart. She didn't want to dim that rare glow of excitement lighting his face. After hours of climbing through mountain roads, the town appeared suddenly. Small storefronts, quiet streets, and people who stared with the curiosity of those unaccustomed to strangers. Following her map out of town, she eventually reached a long gravel driveway swallowed by towering pines. At the end of it stood the mansion, massive, weather-worn, yet undeniably magnificent. Its peeling paint and sagging porch didn't hide its former beauty. Something about it felt alive, like it was waiting for someone to return. Danny sprinted up the stairs before she could warn him, pressing his face to the dusty windows with a grin she hadn't seen in months. Claire stepped forward slowly, holding the deed in shaking hands. When she turned the heavy brass key, the door opened with a soft breath, releasing cool air scented with old wood and lavender. Inside, sunlight cut through dusty curtains, illuminating chandeliers, a grand staircase, and furniture covered like slumbering ghosts beneath white sheets. For the first time in a long time, Claire felt the weight on her shoulders shift. This place may have been forgotten by the world, but standing there in the quiet hall, she realized she wasn't afraid of the silence. She felt welcomed by it. Exploring the mansion was like stepping through a forgotten story. Claire opened curtains, tested faucets, and whispered silent thanks when water sputtered to life after years of stillness. She examined each room, libraries, parlors, bedrooms, and imagined how long it had been since anyone walked these halls with purpose. Danny darted around like the house belonged to him already. On the second floor, he pulled her into a library filled wall-to-wall with dusty books. While clearing space near a shelf, Claire noticed something strange. One section of the bookcase didn't align with the others. A cold draft seeped through a narrow seam. Curiosity overtook caution. She pressed around the edges until the entire bookshelf shifted inward with a deep, ancient groan. Behind it stood a narrow staircase disappearing into darkness. She sent Danny to wait in the library and descended alone with her phone's flashlight cutting a thin line ahead of her. The air grew colder with each step. At the bottom, she found a sealed room, perfectly preserved furniture, filing cabinets, and journals bound in cracking leather. The top journal was marked with initials. Opening, it felt like unlocking someone's soul. Page after page documented families taken in during World War II, families with nowhere else to go. This mansion had once been a refuge, run by a woman named Alina Robertson who sheltered those in crisis. As Claire read, a chill raced through her. She hadn't stumbled into random luck. She had stepped into a legacy. The next morning, sunlight didn't erase the weight of what she discovered. It deepened it. Claire reread Alina's journals, learning how the woman had sheltered families for almost 30 years in total secrecy. These walls had once protected children, mothers, soldiers, widows, anyone who'd stumbled into tragedy. Claire felt a stirring she wasn't prepared for. She had won the mansion, but now she sensed she'd been chosen for something far larger. She searched deeper into the documents and discovered an older deed, one written by Alina herself. The mansion was not meant to be owned. It was meant to be passed from one struggling family to the next. Each recipient given a chance to rebuild before eventually helping others. Claire wasn't just a winner, she was the next caretaker. That afternoon, she drove to the lawyer listed in the paperwork and he confirmed everything. Every winner before her eventually uncovered the hidden cellar and faced a choice: stay temporarily or continue Alina's mission. Some stayed briefly. Only 4 had continued the work. Claire listened as the lawyer described the trust, the guidelines, and the support offered to caretakers who opened the mansion to families in need. It wasn't an easy job. It demanded patience, compassion, and endurance. But when Claire thought of Danny sleeping in the car, of her own desperation, she realized she already knew her answer. 6 weeks later, the first family arrived. Jessica, a young mother with 2 little girls, stepped into the mansion trembling like she expected the floor to collapse beneath her. Claire recognized that expression, the fragile hope of someone who'd been fighting too long. She led them to a warm upstairs room and watched their shoulders loosen as they took it in. Life in the mansion shifted quickly. Some days it felt like a whirlwind of children's laughter echoing through halls that once held silence. Other days were heavy, filled with tears, difficult conversations, and nights where someone needed reassurance that they weren't alone. Jessica grew stronger slowly, finding work, rebuilding routines, letting her daughters play freely in the garden Danny had already claimed as their shared playground. 4 months later, Jessica moved into her own apartment with a steadier voice and a grateful heart. More families followed, each bringing their own storms and their own victories. A father who lost his job. A teenage mother with nowhere to go. An elderly couple pushed out of their longtime home. Not every arrival ended smoothly. Some left early, some struggled, but many left more whole than they arrived. Claire kept a journal now, just like Alina. Every family added a new chapter to the mansion's story, and with each passing month, the old house grew louder with life, louder with hope, louder with second chances reborn under its roof. Seasons turned and the mansion became more than shelter. It became a heartbeat. Danny grew into a gentle, understanding boy shaped by the dozens of people who passed through their doors. He helped younger kids with homework, played with toddlers in the yard, and sat with parents in the kitchen as they cooked meals from their cultures. Claire watched him with quiet pride. The community slowly shifted, too. At first, the townspeople whispered, unsure what was happening in the old Robertson mansion. But as graduates of the refuge found jobs, joined PTA meetings, and volunteered at local events, the town began to soften. Churches donated blankets. Shop owners delivered food. Volunteers repaired staircases and repainted walls. The mayor, once skeptical, eventually acknowledged the refuge as something that strengthened the valley. There were difficult weeks, times when a family struggled or conflict arose. But Claire reminded herself what Alina had understood. Not everyone succeeds at the same pace, and not every journey unfolds cleanly. Yet resilience bloomed in unexpected ways. Children who once cried themselves to sleep began laughing again. Parents who felt defeated discovered new strength. Every night, as the mansion settled into its old wooden creaks, Claire walked the hallways and saw proof of what a safe place could become. It wasn't magic, just human beings rediscovering themselves, one ordinary moment at a time. On the third anniversary of moving in, Claire hosted a reunion that filled the mansion with familiar faces, voices returning like echoes of the past. Families brought dishes from their homes, children ran through the garden where they once played in fear, and laughter poured from windows that once held only dust. Claire stood by the entrance hall watching it all unfold, feeling the weight of her journey press gently against her chest. Margaret, the librarian whose grandmother knew Eleanor, approached with a fond smile and told Claire she had become exactly what the mansion needed, a bridge between generations of struggle and hope. As the night deepened, Claire slipped away to the hidden cellar. She opened her journal to a new page and wrote to the next person who would someday stumble into this same room. She wrote that the work was heavy but beautiful, that people needed more than shelter. They needed a place where they felt seen. She wrote that history lived in these walls not because of the structure, but because of the lives it had carried. The cellar felt warmer than before, filled with the invisible presence of everyone who had walked this path. She placed her journal beside Eleanor's and imagined a future where someone else would continue the chain. The thought didn't scare her. It comforted her. Years passed, and the mansion continued its quiet service. Families arrived broken and left stronger. The journals in the cellar multiplied, capturing victories, failures, heartbreaks, and rebirths. Danny, older now, spoke about becoming a social worker, shaped by the lives he'd witnessed, the resilience he'd grown alongside. Claire often sat on the porch at night, the glow from the windows painting the yard in warm light, and felt gratitude pulse through her like breath. She remembered the nights spent sleeping in a cold car, the hopeless ache she once carried, and the moment a forgotten raffle ticket shifted everything. She realized she hadn't just found a roof, she'd found purpose. The mansion wasn't hers to keep, but it was hers to protect while she could. Someday, another struggling soul would win the raffle, walk through the same doors, feel the same mixture of disbelief and hope. And they would discover the hidden cellar, read the journals, and make their own choice. Claire understood now. The real treasure wasn't the house. It was the people who walked through it. It was the courage to keep going. It was the chance to start again. And as long as these walls stood, no one who came seeking shelter would ever face the world alone.